It's another Friday morning, very early morning now. If you're subscribed to our drops on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the podcasts, you'll see this drops at like 12 in the morning.
Get you fresh and hot. I was thinking, I still love our intro music. I was editing something this week, and I thought I really do still love that intro music a lot.
It's good. I'm glad I was able to find it, and we're using it all the time now. It's great intro music. It's perfect for what we do here. Not too specific.
Not too specific. Do you like? I thought long and hard about the show title today.
That's a good show title. Hear no CFL, see no XFL, speak no merger.
And like I got the monkeys, but I thought that was good. We got a little bit of CFL, of course. I'm sure like the second this drops, the CFL is going to be like coming whatever July 2nd. But in the meantime, we still, as of recording. The other thing, sometimes when we record and then like news comes out, like we record a sliver in time.
Yep. And now that my Thursday nights are freed up, there's a good chance that we might have to tack on sometimes when late news drops. So we'll try to get you the freshest news right out of the box whenever it happens with this whole CFL news or XFL news, whatever it may be. That's what we do here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, with the late night recordings, I got a heck of a guest coming up that actually might work well for a late night recording. We got big timey. We just got the approvals this week related to not what you're thinking, but almost as good. Related to the football leagues up north. So be excited about that. Also, we are journalists. Paul is a practicing journalist. I used to be a journalist. We are still a commentary site. So we got a lot of feedback last week. When we are quoting other reporters, like on the podcast, saying like, hey, so-and-so said this. Don't come at me with like, well, actually that's... When we are sourcing our stuff, go tweet at them. I'll give you the emails, but like now, like if I say that Josh Johnson is on the COVID reserve list, or that he's cut from the team and he's on the COVID reserve list, which I famously did, yes, then please call me out. Josh Johnson, former LA Wildcats quarterback, did that on Christmas Day. But like, go tweet at these other people. Like,
all you're basically doing is just seeing a quote from like a tweet, and that's someone like propagating that info from our show, and then you're coming at us. It's a ridiculous look. It is a completely ridiculous look.
Well, but I just mean like I try to find and I source, and I was spending all night last night figuring out like, okay, what's the medical stuff, who's saying what, and like if we're wrong on like a vaccine number, or if I'm quoting something that's not, if we're coming from the sources, that's all I can do. I mean, I can look at, and they're like, oh, global, like you can't trust. I'm like, well, it's a website. So what do you want me to do? It's the news. Whatever. Anyway, I just thought we are a commentary site. I try to do my best for that, but anyway.
Yeah. And I know sometimes we troll a little bit, but we still do have some journalistic qualities about the show. And we're trying to source as best as we can. So if there's a problem with what you're hearing here, take it up with the sources, not us.
Yeah.
So.
Go tweet at them.
Speaking of sources, we got Scott Stinson from the National Post coming up, Greg James from the 55-yard line on CFL America Radio, and of course, friend of the show, Cole Boozer, former TSL lineman coach, or just a lineman.
No, he is a lineman with the TSL. He is a lineman with the lineman of the TSL. Yes, it's very confusing. That's okay. You're right to be confused. Cole and I talk about this because Cole is an offensive lineman. That's what that's his trade. But he also plays for the linemen in the TSL. They are a team like the power linemen.
Okay, so because I thought this was like Department of Redundancy department.
No,
here. That's what was going on.
You're fine. You're fair to ask that. You are clear in the clear. But Cole played for the Defenders in the XFL, and he played for Tampa back in the day. And so thank you again, Spring League, for setting that up. I got fingers crossed. I got my line out. We're looking for a big guest next week. Really, really hoping we get that. But thank you all to our guests. Yes, Scott, Greg, and Cole Boozer. I am going to say, I'm not going to mention any names specifically, but a great way to get invited back onto the podcast is to promote the podcast that you're on. And so I really appreciate when our guests share things and that. So I'm not going to say anything in particular, but over the last couple weeks, but anyway, I thank you all so much. All of our guests. Scott was great. I thought Scott was fantastic. Did you like Scott?
I did a lot. he seemed very grounded, very like, he didn't seem emotional about his takes. Like there's sometimes that people get a lot of emotional takes about, their beloved Canadian football. And I understand, it's a 108-year league and it's older than the NFL and all the other things you throw out there. But it's like, to have someone come on and kind of present things in a very non-emotional manner. Not saying there's anything bad with emotionally presenting things, but it was very nice to talk to Scott, and he had a lot of good insight, and you'll hear that coming up later on in the show.
Yeah, Scott is like flatline. Like even his emails, like
in a good way.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. But I appreciate that. And then Greg was great, even though he tried to Zoom bomb our interview with Scott. So we got it all going. But yeah, Greg was great too. And then obviously Cole Boozer is just a wonderful charm of a human being. I just had one email. We got a nice email from Mark, M-A-R-C in Canada. He couldn't Google Podcasts doesn't allow reviews. He just said, loving the pod, drops consistently great football talk. Hopefully we hear about games soon. You guys obviously put a lot of work into the shows. Keep it up. You do great interviews with interesting guests. I will definitely recommend to friends.
Good.
Oh, yes. Please subscribe. We've kind of plateaued with the subscribers. We're trying to get to 1,500 to do the Jousters merch giveaway. I might have like an extra XFL Markcast hat that maybe we can give away too. But please like and subscribe. Please subscribe. Doesn't cost you a penny, but we're floating above that 1,300, and we love to get to 1,500 by the end of the spring league so we can do that merch giveaway.
Yes. Please subscribe on not just on YouTube, but on your, whatever audio podcast player.
Yes, we promote the YouTube a lot, but yes, please do that. Just one other note about this. I'm seeing a lot of anti-rock sentiment. As much CFL stuff as we get, a lot of people now are like, F the Rock, you bought the league, what are you even doing? I know. All I want to say with that is there was no other option for XFL fans. So then go away. I mean, I'm serious. Like the league was bankrupt. Danny and The Rock were the only people that bought the league. There was no other bidders. There was no other option. So like, then it wouldn't have been here. So what do you want? Like, you know what I'm saying?
That seems to be like the thing. Like just, I don't know why people just look at like an ownership group and not realize that it's not necessarily the ownership group, but the people that are hired by the organization that will run it 98% of the time. Yeah, I'm sure The Rock will have his 2 cents to add, but you're discounting Danny completely and her ability to, basically, we've talked about it numerous times. The success of the tequila, the success of everything that The Rock is doing, is by in large part to Danny. And it's like, you're going to discount it because it's The Rock? I don't know, man. I don't think The Rock is as big of an equation in this whole purchasing of the XFL that people make it out to be.
Well, and also like then the XFL wouldn't have existed. Like, so you wouldn't have had, but I see that all the time right now. I'm like, guys, there was no other option. There was no third option. Like there was no second option. It was like, they went away or Danny and The Rock bought it. So like,
beggars can't be choosers. Like beggars cannot be choosers.
Yeah. Do you like my, I'm going to let you say what's residing on my head right now.
It's a beanie here in the US, but north of the border, they call it a toque. I was actually at a bar with my friend Nigel. He's an actor, of course, up there in Vancouver. And he was like, I'm going to grab my toque. And I'm like, what the F is a toque? And he's like, this thing. I'm like, no, it's a beanie. He's like, no, it's not. It's a toque. I'm like, no, it's a beanie. And we went back and forth for like 15 minutes arguing like beanie versus toque. And he's like, the beanie is the thing you put on your head, the color thing with the spin wheel. I'm like, no, but this is the beanie too. This is what we call a beanie down here in America. I'm sorry to offend any Canadian people sorry, but that's what we call it down here. And then of course, I brought Nydia in on the discussion. She's like, it's totally a beanie. I'm like, see, it's a beanie. She's like, no, he's like, no, it's a toque. And I'm like, okay.
Well, friend of the show, Jim Mullen, sent me this wonderful hat. Also, so we now have our Edmonton flag. I'm assimilating to the CFL. We have our Edmonton flag. I've redone the background, and then I have my other hat up here. I thought that was nice. It has a Velcro back, so Jim, I'm not going to wear it, but I will hang it proudly. And then I have my Football Canada hat on today. So, but yes, I have all new background.
I like it.
So watch.
I'm getting an only background too. So right now this is temporary. I've decided that doing these kinds of podcasts for my bedroom is causing me to lack sleep. So I need to get the machinery out of here and have like a peaceful sanctuary where I can actually get some rest.
Yeah, Paul's under construction. Two other quick things we're getting in. A lot of preface. Sorry. Did you know there is a McMahon Stadium in Calgary?
I didn't know that, no.
Do you think that is the secret linchpin to the CFL merger talks? There's a McMahon Stadium owned by the University of Calgary. Also, it only had the trailer only has like 100 views on YouTube, but there is a fascinating new documentary about the AAF failure coming out August 10th. It's called Alliance is Broken. Listener Max sent it to me, and I go, well, I don't know how much, it looks very fascinating, but there's literally like 101 views or something now for it. I'm like,
I'll have to check it out. I didn't know about it. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, kind of like, and you'll like this. They call the AAF the Fire Festival of Football Leagues.
That's completely accurate.
So
completely accurate.
We're back to the zero sugar-free. We're done, drank all the dog water. So now we're back to the sugar-free Zoa.
Is that the pineapple coconut?
No, this is just the original. I like the original. That's my thing. So there we go.
You always need that sound of that opening of the can for some reason. We need to be quiet during that.
Yeah, that's good.
Big drawing point for the podcast.
People, stay tuned. Comment if you like the Zoa can opening on the YouTube.
All right, let's move on. Let's get into the meat of the show. Exactly 1 month ago, May 21st.
As of May 21st, sorry.
As of May 21st, okay. Some of the things you're typing in here kind of confusing me a little bit. Commissioner Randy Ambrosie spoke on the CFL's return to play plan, and it's been 1 month.
So, that's what we're talking about. Hearing no, transparency, hearing nothing. I just thought he did tweet. He tweeted a very nice "Get your COVID vaccine" message, which I thought was great. He had a very wonderful thing. But we got a lot of pushback last week. Like, what do you want the CFL to say? I'm like, well, anything. Like, looks good, sounds good, whatever. I got a lot of like, well, it takes time to craft messages, and the PR department. I'm like, you just like. Ambrosie could tweet something. Like, it's not, you don't need to overthink. But anyway, it's been over a month now. We're getting ready. But this is the meat of the story this week is this BC Lions setting to begin training camp in early July.
Wednesday on the Donnie and Dolly show, I'm assuming that's Dolly, they shared some news with the BC Lions starting training camp in early July. That coincides with yesterday's PFD report about CFL training camps beginning soon. And it sounds like they're reaching out to players.
Yeah, so and we'll get into, the Pro Football Talk, that was a big thing, came out on Tuesday, Mark Florio, and it seemed at the time, it was a really weird article, and I'll kind of jump down here a little bit on the Google Doc just to kind of give so CFL News, we follow, and they help us get all the guests and stuff, they tweeted out, because they tweet out the articles from the CFL, and Florio wrote like, hey, CFL is, we're coming back, or we're good to go August 5th, and everybody was like, did Florio, is he just getting to the press release about the CFL stuff from it was really weird. And so immediately Matt Mango, friend of the show, tweeted, I haven't heard anything. I don't know what's going on. And so then 3 Down immediately came out and they were like, hey, contrary to a report, the Canadian Football League has not informed the players, this is not happening, whatever. And then Naylor tweeted, there's no change in the status. It's still dependent on the approvals, whatever. Well, then the next day, then this report came out about the BC Lions. So it does seem like maybe Florio wasn't crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like it was confusing, but now it's like, oh, maybe Florio was going on. So any thoughts on any of that?
Again, it seems like there's not transparency. Like there's one message going out and then there's these back channels. Who was it that said it's like the league wants to be for the fans. They're like, yeah, come on inside our insiders club. And then once they get to a certain door, then, they're like, oh, wait, not this insider club, but you're in the club, but just not this club. And it seems like they're doing some back channel stuff, but not being transparent about the back channel stuff. Like if you're calling players up, that's good news. That's good PR. Why don't you put that out there? I don't know.
Yeah, so one of the hosts of the Donnie and Dolly show, Neil McAvoy, who's the co-general manager and director of football operations for the Lions, the quote was, he just told me that before we went on the show, that the BC Lions are telling their players on July 2nd to start quarantining. So that means July 16th training camp is a goal for the Lions. The season will start in August. So we're feeling good. I was listening to the 3 Down guys last night. Dunk is a little more realistic right now. Hodge is they think they're good to go. Dunk points out, Ontario still in lockdown. Like, are they going to get out? And then we're starting football in a couple weeks. And we talked with Scott too about bringing the players up north. And I believe Dunk quoted on their podcast. So if it's wrong, tweet at Dunk. That it would be cost like $1 million, right, to bring up all the players and everything. So, it's not as easy as just flipping the switch and going. I mean, we talk about, how much lead time and, okay, the NHL, they started whatever, but CFL still needs some time to kind of get all this going. And I think hearing these weird things from like other podcasts and stuff, I just don't think it's like the way to let your players know that this is happening.
Yeah, you should be in direct contact. They shouldn't have to hear like us and go, oh, well, there's our news that we're waiting for. Like, they're going to start calling us now. You should be calling your players before we have the chance to inform your players.
Well, yeah, especially when and I love Matt because, obviously he's been on the show and a great guy, but like he is like cut to the chase. He's like, I haven't heard anything. And you're like, I appreciate that because, anyway, but that's kind of the news. It was a really confusing week. We have a quote from Rod here coming up later, Rod Peterson, the battle of this, but it was really confusing because it seemed like there was news and there wasn't, but that's kind of the plan is, I guess, July 2nd, start quarantining. So
we'll see. A friend of the show, Rob Vanstone, interviewed Roughriders punter and former Seattle Seahawk, John Ryan, on the XFL and the season delay and the league communications. And John Ryan said he's very concerned about it. I assume the lack of communication. Yep. He hasn't got that much information. If I read continuing the quote, you haven't got that much information from the league, which is kind of the most concerning part. When they told the players they were going to report to camp on July 2nd, I think everyone was pretty excited because that was the first real concrete news that we've gotten since they told us that the season was going to be canceled last year.
That's crazy time. That's crazy time that the first thing that he's felt like gotten any news at all from the league. And this was kind of revolving both the season and the XFL, wherever he's like, I haven't heard anything. Like, this is the first, like, any bit of positive news. And that is terrifying.
Because, again, the league should be communicating directly with the players, and the journalists shouldn't be the ones informing the players. Seems odd. It's a weird flex.
Like, just this was a lot of the problems with the FCF when we cover fan control football, and they weren't releasing a lot of the news. Like, there was the whole deal where the championship game was going to be like an hour as opposed to 40 minutes. And like, that just came out on like a random podcast interview that one of the players did. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, you need to be controlling this message coming out. Right. And, having people do social media and stuff. I mean, they have to see all this stuff. They look at our, like my Instagram stories, like they look at that. I mean, there's someone is there monitoring this stuff. So they certainly know. John Ryan is really not excited about the merger. He's very concerned about losing. That just came out today. I didn't want to blow up the show too much, but he is concerned and thinks that you're losing the whole Canadian aspect of it. So, I mean,
and John Ryan's a guy that has played both American and Canadian football, of course. He was great with Seattle for many years. So, he's definitely got a valid opinion. And we value everybody's opinion about this merger. And of course, we've stated many times what we'd like to see happen. But, regardless, I guess we're just, always constantly hating on the CFL for some reason, even though we're not. We love the CFL.
Not at all. Appreciate it. I can't do that. I have we are here. Ding dong. I got my Football Canada hat. So,
Public Health Agency of Canada is awaiting written provincial support for the CFL return to play plan. Before they consider the proposal, they require each of the provinces to approve the league's COVID-19 return to play plan. Contrary to a recent national report, the federal government tells 3 Down Nation that no approvals have been given by any provincial jurisdictions.
Remember how last week we talked about like TSN kind of jumping the gun and friend of the show Farhan and Naylor are talking about, hey, we're approved to play everywhere. They came out. This just came out this morning along with the John Ryan thing that the Public Health Agency of Canada is, still waiting on all that. They're also trying to get that quarantine period down from 14 days to a week because obviously you're going to be bringing in the players, across the border and we get in with Scott, all the issues with that. But it's interesting.
To that point, like if a player comes from across the border and they've gotten their vaccine here and both doses, shouldn't that quarantine thing be?
Yeah, I mean, presumably, but that's not, again, like that could be something the league could talk about. Like that would, what do you want the league to talk about? That would be a great thing. What would that look like?
I don't know.
It was terrifying when Scott's like in his interview, he's like, yeah, like this is some of that back of the napkin stuff that they work on. I'm like, that is terrifying to me that the CFL is like, oh, here's our plan. Like, what's this? Like,
get a scratch piece of paper. Yeah. BC Lions president Rick LaCour, I think it's LaCour, said that a 14-game schedule will be announced in the coming days. As a football club, we are very encouraged by both today's announcement and the fact that case numbers in British Columbia continue to decline. As we've stated all along, our goal is to host as many fans as we can, beginning with our home opener. We will continue to monitor developments over the next several weeks and work with provincial health officials with the goal of welcoming back our great fans to BC Place in the safest manner possible. Okay, Rick.
But
the case numbers in British Columbia are declining, but in Ontario, it's a different story. You have to look at the entire country with this thing.
Well, and that's also, I do hear a lot of like, well, the vaccines in Saskatchewan are going good. So that means it's like, well, there's varying levels of population and varying levels of infrastructure and everything else.
I mean, even here in the U.S., look at us. Like California, we're going to completely reopen June 15th. No masks, no nothing.
Yeah.
And that's because our caseload has plummeted. And in some states, it's still a little higher. And, California is considering restricting travel from states to here because their caseload is a little higher. So long story short, you can't just look at what's going on in your province and go, well, we're good to go. It's a national thing because you are talking about teams crossing provincial borders from Ontario. Let's put it out there, from Ontario, and coming into, British Columbia and potentially bringing COVID with.
I did see today, it just came out, like the Ontario rates have really gone down. I mean, just to like, and we're right, we're all right, but just anyway, but what's interesting about this whole Rick LaCour with the CFL is, so the BC Premier John Horgan wants, so BC Lions, right, Rick, but then you have the Premier, John Horgan, saying he wants to push this 2020 start further into August, and that he and Dr. Bonnie, not Bonnie Hammer, Bonnie Henry, have been in communication with the BC Lions. And so they say, even though Rick put out this statement, right, like this is all, because it's weird, like it's all these conflicting things. So even though he put this out, Horgan says it's not just the dates, it's dates and data. I'm optimistic that if we can push the season further into August, we might be in a better place, he said. And then Dr. Henry said, it's not going to be by the dates, it's going to be by the data. I know we've talked, we've hammered this to death. But my point is like you have these like presidents and whatever coming out, and they're like, this is why you need transparency from the league. It's because we have all these different things going on and there's no unifying voice of any kind.
I don't think there's communication between the league. I think there's too many chiefs that are communicating for the league, like a president here or a coach here. There's too many chiefs communicating for the league as opposed to the league having a unifying message. And it's just, I understand that you can't tell owners to shut the F up. I understand that completely. But there needs to be a unified message, and there needs to be a group that is communicating. I don't know if that's like a direct, like a special office inside the CFL that is dealing directly with pandemic-related stuff. 3-people team, whatever it may be. I know that they're losing money, that they're hemorrhaging. I understand all of that. But there needs to be a group that is handling the message going forward and communicating with these agencies in these different provinces and kind of getting everyone on the same page in terms of what the data says. Because it seems like people are just making up their own decisions and going, oh, well, we're going to go play. And then the people that we trust to give us the info are saying, no, you're not. We need more.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, I'm absolutely correct in that. It's such a mix and match. Even like the NFL last year, Good Morning Football did this whole thing about it. Like they had these 2 or 3 women that all they did for the NFL season was like figure out the COVID, like if someone got sick and they're like, okay, well this, like all the different, but like that's all they did. Like the whole season for everything was like they managed, and they said like they literally couldn't have done the season without them. Like they were the 3 smartest people in the world that figured out all this stuff. And it's like, again, like you said, the CFL and money and stuff, but it's, anyway.
It's a key thing that you probably do need.
Yes. So Lisa McLeod, we've talked about her before. She is now more hopeful. Last week, this stuff goes back and forth. She's more hopeful now. She goes, I feel a lot more hopeful today than maybe I did a couple days ago. August might still be too early for fans in the stands, but that's something that I've engaged with the chief medical health officers on.
Okay. I mean, it's, she also says that she's absolutely committed to trying to get us to a point where Hamilton is able to host the Grey Cup. Of course, Hamilton is the site that's in Ontario. And
we will be there.
We will be there, barring any spikes in COVID cases or anything like that. And assuming the border is open by then, assuming, there's a lot to be taken into account. So if they're continuing to trend downward in Ontario, that's a lot more optimistic now than. And I think once you see that, some people were saying, like my friend who lives in Ontario, she's like, I had to wait. I'm now. There's two months in between my first and second doses. And I'm like, that's not entirely safe. But yep. I think now you're getting to a point where they're starting to realize that there are some people that are not getting vaccinated. I'm not making a political statement, but when those people don't get vaccinated, it means the supply goes up, which means you can speed up the second dose and you can get past that 14-day period where you're like, okay, I can freely, go out and, do things and stuff like that. And then once those people get vaccinated, it stops spreading as much. And then, COVID cases plummet. So there's still a lot of time between now and then, and we'll see. We'll just see.
I don't like to plagiarize too much, but I did think Rod's response to this was great. He wrote a little blog. He was on vacation all week, but he wrote a little, it was all caps. But Tuesday, just imagine Rod typing this in all caps. Tuesday was another particularly confusing day when the BC Premier said he'd like to see the CFL move their August, back a few weeks. Meanwhile, at the same time, President Rick quoted saying the 14-game schedule is close to being released with an August 5th start date. The Ontario government said there will be no large gatherings at all. The BC government said there won't be any until next winter. And then we see quotes from these same people saying that perhaps the CFL's August 5th kickoff is possible.
Too many Chiefs. There's too many Chiefs. Too many people are just saying whatever they want. Get on the same page and talk to your players too.
Here's a fun one from your good friend, Mr. Madani.
Oh, he's gathered intel on the drafts making their way around CFL front offices for the potential 2021 season. BC and Ontario have clearly stated they have not signed off on any return to play proposals, and those health and safety plans must be approved before football can be back on the field. Madani said, the sense I'm getting is that there are no plans from the CFL side to play any Canadian football in Ontario in the month of August. This is how it's been explained to me. There have been a few drafts of the 2021 schedule sent around, and every draft has Ontario teams playing West. The latest draft, I've been told, has the BC Lions not being in Vancouver, especially early on in the season. Now I'm starting to really wonder if there might be a scenario where the Lions are going to play home games somewhere else. Could it be on the Prairies? Could it be on the Rockies? Something like that. Could that even be a possibility? I don't know. Maybe you should call someone at the Twice Failed League and coordinate that. We talked to Scott about this. I've asked about this for weeks. Explain to me how that revenue sharing works. If the BC Lions play in Saskatchewan, are we getting Saskatchewan? Like, are they going to the games? Are we getting ticket revenue from that? Because again, for the NFL, it's like a drop in the bucket, right? Like San Francisco played in Arizona. Like they don't, they moved around a little bit with that. But we're so dependent on this money, and then we're not playing in Ontario for a month, but we're going to do more home games later. Okay, but where does that money go? Good question. Well, we'll find out. Insider talk, I'm assuming from 3 Down Nation. Hodge, with his weekly blog of anonymous quotes, said, did you see that Bob Young, owner of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and Mark Goody, the REDBLACKS president, and then the Roughriders head coach, again, too many Chiefs, all coming out and saying they're playing. I guess that's them getting tired of being bullied behind the scenes by a couple teams that don't want to play in Montreal.
But that's, he like assembles, he gets all his little tidbits, and then so it's kind of interesting because you're like, oh, what? But it'd be really cool if I was just like, who said that? I mean, I get that he's trying to maintain.
He's consolidating and then presenting a case where it's like, we know who the two teams are that don't want to play. We understand who you guys are. Rod said it on his show. Other people have said it on his show, MLSE, and they're really tight with the Montreal owners. So and that's the thing. Like we talked to who was it that said Montreal just barely got bought? It was Scott.
Yeah.
And if you just bought the team, why wouldn't you want to see him play? Because you're friends with MLSE and you want to drive that merger talk? I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm with that, where I think if they do merge, I do think they pull Vancouver and the two larger cities, and then they go CFL can go exist on the prairies. I mean that. I don't think that's what people want to hear, but I could see that. I could see it being a 6-team CFL.
CFL Players Association President Solomon Eliman, hopefully I got that right that time, sent a memo to the membership on the 21st saying we are continuing discussions with the league both on both the start of the season and the mechanics of modifying the collective agreement to accommodate a COVID-restricted environment. Your bargaining committee is pressing the league to commit to the start of August 5th so you can get your affairs in order and prepare to play football. With that being said, the authorities in both federal and provincial areas, they have the last word on when we can start training camp and begin a shortened season, as there needs to be an allowance for a percentage of fan attendance.
Yeah.
So even the president of the Players Association is realizing the owners will not put a product on the field if they're not able to put fans in the stands.
Well, also they're looking out for the players, because it's like, a lot of these guys have jobs, right? They're working, they're training. Like we've talked about this. Like you can't just, why can't the CFL just ramp up in a week? Because these players got to figure out, like, okay, I got to take 6 months off of my job now and go up and play, or I got to quit, or I got to do it. I mean, you can't just go, right? Like a lot of these guys aren't in these cities right now where they're playing. So I'll take credit for this one. This is a little Reid tidbit. Josh Davis isn't going to listen to the podcast, but Josh Davis and XFL News Hub, you're welcome. Jeff Reinbold, he's a coach in the spring league right now that's existing in Indianapolis and Houston. And he tweeted this week, because he is a special teams coordinator for the Tiger Cats. Well, he was coaching for the Generals, and he tweeted, hey, I'm heading back to, I'm done with the TSL. I'm heading back up to get ready for the CFL season. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I mean,
again, communication, there's back channels and then there's no channels.
Yeah. Does he know something? Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I mean, he's not like the big, like the season like hinges on his like whatever, but I did think that was weird that he was going out of his way to tweet about that and say that.
I think at this point, the people that are really ingratiated with covering the CFL that are the ones in Reid's mentions every single day, maybe you might want to start tuning your vitriol to the fact that they are not giving us, there's all this double talk, and there's all these multiple chiefs running things, and there's all these, it's out of control, and maybe direct your angst toward getting a collective message from the league and not just an owner here or a coach here. And I think like this back channel communication thing, that's part of what the problem is. Like no players are being told anything, but then coaches are leaving jobs to go back to the CFL because apparently they've probably been told something by someone who might not be able to tell them anything.
Yeah. And Cole comes on, Cole Boozer is on today from the Spring League, and I've had my own qualms with how they're handling media and stuff, but they at least have a consistent message. So, I mean, I have my own critiques about them and player availability and stuff like that. Thank you very, they've been gracious with getting everyone, eventually, but like, at least they're controlling the message, right? So I would rather work through the channels and have a cohesive message than kind of this mixed mosh of stuff that we have going on. Although it is better for the podcast because we have more stuff to talk about.
Completely agree. Percentage of Canadians who have received their first dose of COVID vaccine, the percentage is now surpassing the United States.
Yeah. And
when you get that second dose, it's going to be incredible to see how fast the numbers drop in terms of your caseload. I'm starting to kind of feel more optimistic about things as I'm reading stuff like that, where, there's a higher percentage of Canadians that have got their dose. That being said, there's also a lower percentage of people in Canada compared to us. Like, the big cities, they have, good size amount of people in them, but then you're talking like the other outlying areas, like 53% of people, in a town that has maybe 250,000. That's not too many. Like that's still, there's still, it's a smaller section. What I'm saying, I'm hopeful. I'm starting to get optimistic.
The other interesting, I was reading this, it was either this week or last week, that the number of anti-vax Canadian people is far less than the number and we don't need to get into politics in United States politics in the last couple of years that maybe led us to that point. But that there's probably a higher percentage of Canadians that want to get the vaccine just overall than the United States.
I'm still waiting for my superpowers to kick in for my second dose.
Yeah,
it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, last thing, I'm sure they're all going to move towards it, but so far the Panthers and the Rams and the Chargers, they're both, with SoFi, but they've all announced that we're going full steam ahead, no masks, no vaccinations, open to fans in the stadiums. What do you think about Tom Glick, president of the
Pepper Sports and Entertainment?
Yeah. Sure, bro. Bold strategy, Cotton.
I think you honestly need to have can you show your Vax card? Oh, you can't? It's an indoor stadium in LA. It's an indoor stadium in LA. I repeat, it's an indoor stadium in LA. Good luck.
Yeah, I thought that
you can't say this, and when California is saying you might not be able to do that. Anyway. I don't know. All right, we're gonna take a break right now.
We got the big XFL thing coming up.
I got big XFL thing. I mean, huge.
Well, I'm sure that is leading other shows. So
okay, that's fine. Got a break coming up. We're going to bring in Scott and Greg, and then we'll have this big XFL news right after the break. Scott Stinson, National Post writer, joining us now. How's it going, Scott?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Not bad. Not bad.
Good.
Reid's got his Canadian football toque on there. You guys call it a toque up there. We call it a beanie. We call it a beanie down here, and my Canadian friends are like, "What? What's the thing?" Anyway,
yeah.
How's everything how's everything going up there with the COVID situation? And
well, it's funny. It relates very specifically with the Canadian Football League in that we are waiting to hear essentially what is going to happen with the 2021 season because in a very broad sense, Canada was a little bit behind the US in terms of vaccinations. And so whereas things have opened up and fans are back in stands in the States, we're not there yet. They're getting to the point now where I think we're, a few weeks away, less than a month from having some of the decisions made in terms of approvals and borders opening up potentially and things like that. But right now, the CFL came out with a plan, so to speak, a few weeks ago saying we hope to have everything sorted out for an early August start. And we'd be able to make decisions by the mid-June. And, it's almost June now and no decisions have been made. So I think we're getting down to the brass tacks in terms of they need to see that the provinces continue to improve in terms of COVID numbers and positive cases. And then they go from there to approving some sort of return to play plan, probably without any fans in the stands in the early going. And then from there, potentially we're going to have some sort of CFL 2021 season. But it's almost like the fight against COVID in Canada very much mirrors the situation with the CFL right now, because it's kind of a hold and see and hope everything continues to improve over the next couple of weeks. And then I think some firm decisions will be made.
How do you feel right now, optimistically about everything?
I think that they are on track to have some sort of season. I think the one thing that could derail that possibility is if, say, for example, Ontario or Quebec, there are 3 CFL franchises in Ontario, Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton. There's one in Quebec and Montreal. If those provinces, which were the provinces that kind of had the worst of it in the early parts of COVID, if those provinces are reluctant to allow fans, even a limited number of fans in the stadiums by, September, say, then I think we're back to a situation where we're wondering if the CFL is going to go ahead with the season. That's kind of like the worst case scenario, though. I do think, having said that won't be what happens, and that we'll continue to see over the next few weeks that things are progressing, and then everyone will be okay with what the CFL is planning. They might even start with, the expectation is that they'll start with a bunch of games out west where the provinces seem a little more open to having fans in stands, and then it'll progress from there. But that is the one, the fly in the ointment is that one or two provinces might say, we're not signing off on this just yet. And ultimately the league needs assurances, right? Like they're not going to start moving. They're not going to start bringing players back and open training camps and things until they can be 100% certain that the schedule that they have mapped out is something they're going to be able to do.
Has there been any movement in terms of, we haven't touched on this in a while, has there been any movement in terms of the potential of a government loan to the CFL? We know they got turned down for a no interest loan. Has there been any movement on that, or is that kind of still?
That is not in the cards. There has been a little bit of reporting, basically just people checking in and saying, hey, is this a possibility at this time around? And it's no more likely to happen now than it was a year ago. So I think that's why they're, put it this way, they're making plans to have a season with a federal loan not being part of those plans. So I don't think anything really hinges on it in terms of money from the government, support from the government. There'll probably be different things they might try to do to help get things off the ground again, but nothing in terms of financially backstopping the league so that they could play this year.
Something that I'm curious about, and, obviously they turned down the bubble. We didn't do the bubble last year. We don't want to do the bubble this year. We're talking, shipping some of the teams out west. I even saw 3 Down had an opinion piece the other day about playing, finding a couple stadiums and playing everything. How does that revenue, do we know how that would work? Like if one team is playing and another team, it's fan driven. I mean, I hear that a lot, right? That was when Ambrosi came out and said, that was the big plan. But I'm like, if we need the fans in and we need the money from the fans, but yet there's no revenue share in that way, how would that, do we know how that would work?
We don't know. Again, because so much of this is hypothetical and back a napkin kind of stuff. And even when commissioner is saying, well, what we could do is potentially start out west, they weren't saying, and as part of that, they would split the revenues or whatever. I mean, I guess you could theorize that if they start playing games out west, then that just means the Eastern teams are going to have a bunch of road games early and a bunch of home games late, and the attendance stuff will all kind of balance itself out. Or they could do something where they agree to split gate revenues more equitably than they might previously have done. I mean, in CFL terms, that's a whole nother ball of wax, because there are certain teams that have really good attendance and there's certain teams that don't. And there are, maybe that doesn't matter if you're only having 5,000 people in a stadium anyway, but historically that would not fly, because the Saskatchewans and the Winnipegs and the Edmontons of the world don't want to be having to share gate revenue at a significant amount with a team like Toronto, which doesn't get nearly as many fans. So I assume this is one of those things when Ambrosi talks about this stuff that could all kind of be worked out, but it certainly would fit under the category of details that have not really been discussed publicly yet.
When you talk about this, being back in napkin writing, ideas, right, theories, I mean, you've covered this league obviously a lot longer than we have. Is that par for the course? Is that terrifying? Is that somewhere in between?
Well, that's a good question. I think in the Ambrosi era, there has been an awful lot of big ideas and things that get talked about as this is something we want to do, and we're really excited about it. And then when you drill down a bit further, you go, how's that going to work exactly? And the commissioner, one of his great strengths is to be very enthusiastic and to be a big salesman and to say, no, it's going to be awesome and this will work. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with the whole global expansion project that he's been on for a few years now, but my perspective from the moment it was dropped was wait, so you're going to get a couple of guys from Mexico and Finland and Germany, and they're going to be on your practice roster, and Germany's going to care about that some way. Like I've never really understood that part of it, like, because the whole idea of that global expansion would be you are creating interest in these other countries in the CFL specifically, and just having a smattering of guys from around the world as part of the league, I don't think is going to make a CFL fan out of some random dude in Frankfurt. But and so having said all that, I kind of feel it's a little bit the same way with this pandemic reaction, in that the commissioner and his office and the league are often like coming up with things that they think will work, and maybe it'll be a bubble, and maybe it'll be this thing, and maybe we'll start things off out there. And often the details are kind of left for you to sort out yourself. And maybe they'll come out with something a bit more firm. But I do think, as much as this is me kind of poking fun at them, if I'm a season ticket holder of whatever team it might be, I think you could rightly say at this point that you've gotten very little assurances that there's going to be a season, that you're going to be able to go to it, that whatever deposit you gave them before the 2020 season was canceled is going to be honored. And that's the part that I think, and I'm certainly not the only person to say it, but there's been concern that the transparency from the league offices over this whole period has been scant.
What happens if there's not a season?
Well, look, I don't think any league can not play for 2 years and continue to operate in anything like its normal function. I mean, at some point the players are going to say, we're going to go do something else. And especially guys, given like everywhere else has been playing, it's not the CFL is not the only league that's had some challenges, but whether it's the major pro sports, which we all know have of course come back and operated, are now in like season 2 during the pandemic, but even much smaller things, the WNBA, the NWSL soccer, there's a small little Canadian soccer league that's only been around for a couple of years, like a very lower tier professional organization, but even they played in the bubble last year. So at some point, like, you have to kind of put up or shut up. And I think that's a thing that the league's going to have to decide. And if they are sort of rolling with the idea that they're going to get some sort of fans in the stadium to offset the operating losses, but to my mind, they're going to have to come to a decision point and say, we're going to have to go ahead with this thing, even if it means we might not have the fans in the stands that we ultimately hope to have. Because I just don't think you can not have it for another year. I think that's absurd and a ridiculous ask of your fans and your employees, and especially your players.
Could they have done anything different to maybe
operate?
Operate in turn and withstand this.
Yeah, I think they should have played last year, to be honest with you. I think it exposed the financial problems of the league, and the fact that there are certain franchises in particular that don't make enough money even in normal times, and they didn't want to lose even more money in difficult times. But I think that was a decision that was bad for the league ultimately, and they have ownership groups that are, some of them are backed by a lot of money, big corporations, that kind of thing. And I think the move should have been to just play and to keep people interested in the game, and to say, you know what, this is going to be tough, but maybe we can get some support. Whatever the loan, we've never really known what the loan provisions were with the federal government. The report, of course, is that they wanted an interest-free loan of $30 million. They probably could have got some sort of financing at some sort of acceptable interest rate. I mean, the Canadian government was handing out lots of money to all sorts of different organizations during the pandemic when things were closed. And I think looking back, I'm not sure Randy and Brezzy would ever admit it, but I think they should have played last year and then set themselves up for something again this year. So we'll see what happens. I still think, if you're to ask me what my optimism of the fact that there's going to be a season, I think there'll be a season. I'd probably say there's a 80% chance there'll be a season, but there is that possibility that something screws it up along the way.
Something that I've been because I spend way too much time with all this stuff now. Something that we do, for fun. But something that I've been pondering about, obviously last year they had the vote. Certain teams didn't want to play. Yeah. We've been hedging our bets, fans in the stadiums. We need that to go ahead. Obviously Bob Young came out with the Ticats and all that last week. Hey, we're going to play in the Red Blacks and all that. What if we get here close and some of the teams still just don't want to play, right? Even if we can get 10% of the fans in. Have we thought? I mean, that's what I'm thinking at this point.
Yeah, I actually think the bigger wrench in the works potentially, I'll get to your question in a second, Reid, but the other potential problem is the border. Right now, the border is theoretically closed. It's not really closed between Canada and the U.S., but you can drive across it if you're an essential worker or a traveler. Airline travel essentially is close to the point where you're supposed to go into a expensive hotel quarantine if you arrive via air. So one of the challenges with setting up any sorts of training camp scenario is they're going to have to allow players and staff to come back in some way that is different than the rules for the general public right now. Is that a huge hurdle? No, it's not a massive hurdle because they did it with the NHL playoffs. They said, okay, if you come back, you only have to quarantine for a week and it'll not be a massive burden. It was normally a 14-day quarantine. They let it be a week. They didn't worry about the hotels. So they can do that kind of stuff. But the question is are people Canadians, or is the public going to get really annoyed at politicians who are all of a sudden making exceptions for CFL players returning? Again, I think it's entirely possible that could all be handled relatively pain-free. But I also sort of wonder when you have provincial leaders who are kind of fighting with the federal government over the border closures and not doing enough to keep people out and so on and so forth, will they then turn around and welcome returning CFL players? So that's a question. The larger question that you asked about whether certain teams will be reluctant, again, I got to think that by this point, if you own a CFL franchise and you're sitting there saying, no, I'd rather not play in 2021 and go 2 years without this team taking the field, you should not be in this business because it's just absurd. The league has to play. You cannot expect these guys to sit out 2 years. As we all know, professional athletes and football players in particular have short careers. So it's insane to imagine that they would sit out another year. I think, I don't know what, ultimately drove the decision, the votes last summer to not proceed. I mean, obviously money was a big part of it, but I just think so much has happened between now and then. You've got some indication that unless things go horribly wrong, which nobody expects to happen, by some point in the fall, you'll be able to have fans in the stands, even in the eastern cities. So you just have to kind of go with it. And if that means that maybe you're taking a bit of a risk that you will have fewer fans in the stands than you might have hoped, then I think that's just the risk you have to take, because the alternative is I just don't think an option for the league.
And that alternative being
not playing or doing something where they sit out 2021 and they come back in 2022 with some sort of merger with whatever the XFL might be at that point too. So, those are, I would say, the very big picture possibilities, but it would seem very strange to me that would be the way they wanted the Canadian Football League to come to its end, was to basically not exist for 2 years and then come back in a completely altered form with a merger with another league and all that stuff. So that to me seems like not something anybody in the league or amongst the ownership would be really looking to do. That's not to say that the merger and something like that couldn't also happen, but I'd be shocked if they were looking at it as the logical next move beyond the last time they took the field as the CFL as we know it.
So what are your thoughts on the merger?
Well, I mean, without knowing anything about what a merger might ultimately look like, I think there's no way for there to be a merger or a cooperation of any significant amount between the two leagues without one of them essentially giving up its identity. And the one that would do that in that scenario is the Canadian Football League. I mean, the big things for the CFL are it plays over the summer and into the fall. Starts in the spring, plays in summer and into the fall. And it has a big field and 3 downs and different rules, 12 guys on the field, some other stuff that, of course, anybody who follows the league would know. I just don't see how you take an American football league and combine it with all the things that are unique about the CFL and don't essentially give away the store at that point, because you can't really operate a league where there's one set of leagues for one set of rules for one series of games, one set of rules for a different series of games. If the merger, quote unquote, is like the winner of the CFL sometimes plays the winner of the XFL in some kind of exhibition type game or championship game, or whatever you want to call it, maybe something like that can be figured out. I think there'd still be some questions about the timing of the league, like how that works with the way the 2 seasons work would be a problem to overcome. But if it's any like real merger where they're all playing each other and they're sort of having combined schedules, then I just don't think you have what the CFL is anymore. And if that's what the league and its owners and its administration decides is the only way for it to survive, then that's what they'll decide. But I think they'd be kind of kidding themselves if they think they could get into some sort of merger that doesn't fundamentally change what the people who are CFL fans have come to know it for.
So are you hesitant about that then, as someone that, I would assume loves the league that you cover?
Yeah, it's funny because I've covered the last 4 Grey Cups. I've written about the league and its challenges a lot, and I think in a way it's probably done as much of that relative to normal game coverage than a lot of people who follow the league, because I live in Toronto, or the Toronto area, so I'm in one of the markets that doesn't love the CFL. I mean, it just doesn't. There's too much other competition. There's you can go on for days about the challenges facing the CFL in the big Canadian markets, which are Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. So I've often felt like these are real problems that this league's going to have a hard time solving, because they've been in place for quite some time, and they've only kind of gotten worse over time. So I guess what I'm going for there is I acknowledge that the league has some challenges and they don't seem to have any easy solutions to them. And maybe a merger with the XFL is the solution. It's basically an acknowledgement that we've been fighting these same battles all the time. We're trying to get new people interested in Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver. We haven't been able to do it. I just think that it would be a shame if it came about in these circumstances where, they were doing stuff. They thought they were moving ahead with growing the game, growing the league through these global initiatives and stuff. And then they basically, because of the pandemic, decide to give up and go for some sort of merger. To me, that would be a disappointing way for the CFL to come to an end in the way we know it. Because, when Randy Ambrosie was hired, I think it was 2017, he was very much like a guy who cared about the league, played in the league, was a huge CFL booster and supporter, and has been for most of his time going around trying to draw up interest in the league and talking about how great it is. And people like me, where I was saying, look, man, your problem is simpler. You need to figure out how to get Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver on board with your league. And he kind of went off in this other thing about global expansion and trying to do other stuff. And now it seems like he's having whatever these discussions are with the XFL. And to me, that's the missed opportunity is the key to making the CFL a league that can survive and be viable is to just increase the interest in it in some of the markets where the interest is waned. And if they decide that they can't do that and that the only opportunity going forward is some sort of merger, then I guess that's what they'll do.
Why couldn't the rules from Canada football, just carry over? Why can't we play Canadian rules with this XFL potential merger?
You mean like the whole of the league plays Canadian rules?
Yeah.
For example?
Yeah. What's stopping?
Well, I mean, they could. They certainly could if that's the way, Dwayne Johnson and his business partners want to play it. My guess would be that, and this is just my assumption, is that the number of players who are willing, the players, the coaches, like it just becomes a fundamentally different game than the football that people are used to, whether it's US college or NFL. And to be honest, I'm like, that's one of those things. It's a great question in that, being somebody who covers this league, and obviously I watch NFL football as well. It's so hard to know the real answer to the question of which brand is actually better. Like, in terms of, if you had the same players, like nobody's a real CFL fan doesn't fool themselves into thinking that they have better football players than the NFL does. Like, no one's that stupid. They're obviously not. Those guys are better. They're better athletes, however you want to describe it. They're better at that certain skill set. I mean, they're getting paid 10 times what somebody in the CFL is getting paid. So to the extent that you believe with any sort of meritocracy, I think we would agree that the NFL's players are better at football. But the question is, like, if you took CFL rules and you applied it to a similar group of football players, would the game be better? I actually don't know what the answer to that is, and I think a lot of CFL fans would accuse me of selling out the country or something for saying that. But there are lots of CFL games that can look pretty bad. Like, it's when you only have the 3 downs, it can be a lot of punts, and it's just like punt. It can be harder for drives to get going. When it works really well, it's extremely enjoyable to watch, because it's a lot of passing. It's a lot of big passing, because you're trying to gain big chunks of yardage a lot. If you get a sack on first down and it's 2nd and 20, then probably they're throwing deep, because otherwise it's a punt. So it can be exciting. I just think that it's such a different game that it would be a harder sell, I think, for the XFL or the CFL or whatever you want to call it, to kind of sell itself as this wacky football that a lot of American football fans wouldn't be familiar with. I've just always kind of assumed that the XFL wants to at least look like the NFL, even though I acknowledge that they did a lot of rule changes and things like that last time around to try to be innovative and to be different. So, but I do think that the CFL's brand is perhaps a bit too innovative relative to what the football you guys are used to watching down there.
Yeah, I would do anything if I was a fly on the wall and try to keep some of these rules. I mean, we said that before. It is fascinating to me when you mentioned when Ambrosi came in and you said, hey, build within, right? Build the 3 markets. He ended up doing the global thing, right? Going to Mexico, yep. Europe. And now here we are again. We need to build here. And instead, he's looking down south and talking to The Rock and stuff. I think that's a fascinating repeating of history here in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and look, like, the situation in Toronto, again, just to give you a bit of background, like, they played in the Rogers Center, which is where the Blue Jays played. And for the longest time, it was kind of assumed, well, the big problem is they don't get enough fans to really make that stadium work. Like, it's a big stadium that can seat 50,000. If you had 20,000 people in it, it kind of felt empty, and you could hear like echoes of cheers and stuff. And so the thought was, well, if they ever get a little bit smaller, maybe an outdoor stadium, the whole thing would change. And then they did. They ended up moving into the stadium that Toronto FC, the MLS team, plays in. It's significantly smaller. It's outdoors. It's by the water. It's a really nice place to watch a football game. But it hasn't made a significant impact at all in attendance. In fact, the attendance has gone down since it's there. So the problems in Toronto were clearly beyond just the stadium issue. Montreal has been sold now, bought by 2 guys from Ontario who basically have yet to see them play a game because they bought it at the end of the 2019 season. But it was on the market for a long time and was not a hot property at all. It took a long time for that sale to get finalized. Vancouver, the BC team, has been trying to be sold for the better part of a decade, and now the former owner of that team has passed away, so it's controlled by his estate. No one seems to know what's going to happen there. Again, like, the asking price is just not what anybody in the market is willing to pay, because those three franchises, are not profitable. So that speaks to the problem in those markets. I mean, you guys see this in any number of other sports. MLS, which has its own problems, like they can sell expansion franchises for hundreds of millions of dollars, and those things are valuable. And the franchises in those markets just haven't been valuable. So that's for a long time been the problem that needs to be solved. And obviously nobody expected Randy Ambrosie to wave a magic wand and suddenly fix those problems. But it seems a shame that they haven't been able to make any progress, given how enthusiastic he has been about the league and how much he seems to be a guy who has big ideas. Like none of them seem to have translated yet to increased interest in those few markets. And I just point out to you guys, they're big cities. Like it shouldn't be that hard to get people for 9 football games over the course of a year. But so far they haven't been able to unlock it.
My last question for you before we let you go, because I do really want to get your thoughts on this. We're going to be talking more today about the sports betting. We covered that last week, right? Obviously, it's going through the Senate and all that. For the life of me, and we talked and we got a lot of feedback, I can't for the life of me figure out where all this it's going to be the savior, right? I spent all last night listening to Farhan on Derek Taylor. I listened to Dunk and Hodge talk about it. This $10 million or $10 to $20 million, right? They project per year for the CFL. First off, that's coming from like sponsorships of, having rooms in stadiums for people, because you don't get the money on the bets, right? And then second, Ambrosie's saying, on a good year, the league loses 10 to 20 million. And so, Dunk last night on the podcast, he goes, we'll see if we get 20 million from the betting, that covers the losses. Then all we got to do is figure out the 3 teams that you're already talking, right? Montreal and whatever. And we're going to be good to go. And I'm like, okay, so you're using this to cover the losses and we're still in the same crappy situation we are. Right? I mean, am I missing something? I mean, Paul, we feel the same way on this. Are we missing something about the sports betting?
Look, I think the idea that there's going to be this giant pot of money that's going to suddenly be opened up for the CFL, gambling there's going to be revenues there that weren't previously there. That much is obvious. But to your point, Reid, there's going to be companies that are trying to get into the NHL in Canada, into MLB with Toronto and NBA with the Raptors. I don't think you can just assume that FanDuel or DraftKings or whoever are going to be just giving boatloads of money to the CFL just to get their logos on the field. I mean, it kind of gets back to the same problem. If people aren't into the league and betting on your product as much as they are NFL or NHL or something like that, then I don't necessarily think you're going to be the number one place where those dollars are going. There's going to be some revenue there for sure, but I don't think you can just guarantee that it's going to be $20 million or whatever optimistic number that Randy Ambrosie wants to put on. So that's a big part of it. I also think there's just not a big gambling market on the CFL. There are no doubt CFL people that would disagree, but
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they will.
Whereas on any given weekend, I'm aware that Kansas City Chiefs are 7-point favorites over the Vegas Raiders and what the lines are in NFL games and stuff like that. The CFL just is not a very odds oriented business. It just isn't. Like people might know what some of these lines are in the over unders, but and this might be a little bit of somebody who is from Toronto, but nobody's talking about like a 3-team parlay that they're taking out on the CFL schedule this weekend. It's just not been a thing. So I think there could be some money there and some revenue that didn't previously exist, but it wouldn't solve the fundamental problems, as you say, of interest in the league in the 3 big cities. And so, it's a bit of money. It would help, but it doesn't solve any of the long-term issues, which are the demographics in those 3 cities just have kind of shifted away from being CFL fans. And so that problem would still have to be solved. I guess the most optimistic take for a Randy Ambrosio or anybody like that would be, well, if we can get a little money in the door in the short term, then that buys us some time to try to solve these long-term problems. So I guess that would be my most optimistic vision of how legalized gambling on its own could provide a bit of a lifeline to the CFL.
All right. Scott Stinson, National Post writer, want to thank you for your time and coming on here and talking CFL stuff with us.
And I promise I'm not going to put when you said the merger may be the solution. I'm not gonna clip that for the promo and have you saying that the merger is the solution.
Look, guys, obviously they're talking. Like, so as much as there are people on this side of the border who might be like, that's nonsense, it's never going to go anywhere. Like, they wouldn't be having discussions if they didn't think it was a possibility, is my take.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bye. Hey, Reid, are you using your lawnmower 4.0? I know I am. Look at that light. It's blinding. It's blinding light. Support for the Markcast brought to you by Manscaped. They're the best in below-the-waist grooming for men. They offer a precision engineered trimmer, tools for your family jewels. It doesn't jab you. It's nick free as long as you're going at it from the right angle. If you go at it from and try to stab yourself, it's gonna probably leave a mark. They just launched this thing. It's the 4.0. It's their 4th generation trimmer. You can join over 2 million men worldwide, including myself, that have trusted Manscaped for years. And they have this exclusive offer for you: 20% off, free worldwide shipping with the code Markcast at manscaped.com. Reid, use this. What do you think?
I think it's great. Also, I guess it's fair to say rivals of ours now at 3 Down Nation, they're also sponsored by Manscaped now. So if you really want to get back at 3 Down Nation more, use our promo code Markcast. Don't use 3 Down, but I was listening last night. They also, it sounded like they recorded it like in a vortex, like they record terrible audio quality for the Manscaped promo. So we care. We do a whole segment about it between our guests. Because I assume this is airing in between our guests. And so anyway, but it's great. I got the shirt, the underwear. It works great. The light's good. But yes, use Markcast and don't use Homer Nation or whatever their promo code is.
I like how, like, in these points, it tells me exactly what color temperature that light is. It says
3,200.
No, it's 4. It's 4.
4,000. Oh yeah, 4,000 kelvins.
For someone for people like us that are photographers, I was like, wow, they kind of put the color temperature in
white
there.
Balance it.
White balance, and stuff like that. That light is a game changer. I mean, sometimes if you've been grooming below the belt for years, you know that you might miss a little things here and there. And that light can help you see them a lot sooner because hairs grow at different lengths. Maybe you're trimming and you miss something and it pulls later on. You're like, why didn't I get that before? Well, now you have a light to make sure you get that. This thing is incredible. It has wireless charging and that battery lasts so long. If you're thinking about doing this, using the same thing you use on your face don't just get one of these. And you can get 20% off free shipping right now with the code Markcast at manscaped.com. It's 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code Markcast. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
I do have, at the risk of making this podcast too long, I do have one question. If they got the wireless charging, it's like the drop-in ready to go. I'm like, how? I'm a very, my legs, I gotta have it ready to go. I mean, I appreciate the convenience of it, but are people that hairy? They're like, I got to go every day. I just got to have it ready to go. I mean, that's commitment.
I don't know. I don't know if they're hairy every day, but if they are, this is the way to go. Of course, when you subscribe and you get on the subscription plan, they send you a new blade every 2 months and an additional product. It's really cool. A really cool setup they have there with Manscaped. Again, manscaped.com. Use the code Markcast. Get your 20% off and free shipping. Greg James joining us now from the 55-yard line on CFL America Radio.
How are you doing?
Wait, is it Greg Smith or Greg James? Because it says Greg.
I go with Greg James.
Okay, you go with Greg James. Okay, good to know.
Welcome.
Your Zoom name said something different, and I was like, wait, that's going to throw me off.
I didn't make a boo-boo. I was okay.
No.
And you have your Chicago Enforcers jersey on.
Yes, I do. I'm representing the home team today.
There you go.
Very interesting stuff. How are you doing, man? How are you holding up right now?
Doing good. Took the day off. Life's good. I have no complaints here. it's autumn like here in Chicago too, so it's even better.
That's good to know. It's interesting that you're in Chicago and you're covering the CFL. How did that happen?
I don't know. I just kind of fell into it. I've always loved watching the CFL, and it really started with Twitter, and probably the first podcast I listened to. And I don't know how many podcasts you guys have listened to on the CFL side, but there are two guys over in Japan that do a CFL podcast, and they have not done a podcast since the end of the 19th season. But they're the reason why I kind of got back in the CFL and started watching and started really following along. So I credit those Lanny and Scotty over in Japan.
I take it from, there was a lot of confusion this week in the news. Are we playing? Are we not? The Pro Football Talk article came out. We're going to talk about in our show with Mike Florio and all that. What is your mindset right now? Here we are, May 27th. This will air tomorrow, about everything that happened this week. And it was a very confusing week.
I'm kind of just taking the wait and see approach because there's nothing definite. Things could change in a heartbeat. And if you're watching the news overseas right now, you see the numbers starting to go up in places, including, for instance, in Japan. They're talking about, not letting any foreigners in to watch the Olympics. So,
Are you optimistic for the season?
I'm 50-50 for the season at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Just because we've seen the numbers fluctuate and the way the last year has gone, I think we all realize anything is possible. Nothing is definite. Though with the vaccine rollout, obviously the numbers here have gone down, but we're not there yet. So once I think training camp opens, I think the optimism for me and for everybody else is going to go up dramatically. But I think right now with the CFL, until they get to camp, the season is basically hypothetical at this point.
Very true. If there's no season, where do they go in 2022?
Oh, I don't know. That's the question. Obviously nobody really has an answer to. But I agree with other people that I've listened to. I mean, if they don't put a product on the field this year, people do forget about you if you're not around. And having to cancel the season last year was one thing. But to have to do it a second time, I don't know. I think you really run the risk of losing, you risk losing your entire fan base, I think.
Have you exist on Twitter with us, and, we are in a lot of the same conversations, a lot of the same stuff. It seemed like when this all came out with the XFL and everything, and it seemed like it was interesting, whatever. It's become a little, vitriolic, right? It's become a little,
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when all this came about, and then where we're at now?
Well, my take on it was, watching the CFL for as long as I have, and over the years, just seeing the number of people in the stands kind of start to dwindle. And so when the talk of the XFL came up, I'm like, well, honestly, I think this is a good thing because they're starting to figure out, hey, we need to do something now. We need to fix this for future generations because the CFL is losing that younger generation. And the business model, and just in my opinion, from just reading everything, and again, I'm no expert, but I think the business model of the CFL is broken. I mean, it is a 9-team league, and they were talking about expanding to 10 in Canada. But they have a TV contract that only covers player salaries. And it's really kind of a bare bones contract if you just take a look at it. I mean, their contract is worth less than what's paid for many NFL players for a season.
Yeah.
So, and that just I've been positive about it, but I understand the diehard Canadian side of it. But at the same time, I mean, if you want your game to continue and exist, I mean, change is inevitable. I mean, if you even look at the NFL had to change to get where it's at, obviously, today. But there are other sports that are in trouble. People talking about baseball's in trouble. So baseball's making changes.
That's a trigger warning, Paul. You're going to trigger warning, Paul, with the baseball talk.
I think the changes that baseball's making in terms of analytics is ruining the game. I think it's making it worse completely. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, talking about, just people in stands. So living in Chicago, we have two teams. Mm-hmm. This is in my opinion, there are two teams in a one-team town. So you see on the south side, like last night, good example. There were a lot of people in the stands, but they were all Cardinal fans, not White Sox fans. So I don't know. I'm positive about the XFL coming in, but I've really kind of taken a wait and see approach. And I understand people being upset up in Canada, but at the same time, what I'm trying to say is I'm right in the middle.
What can the CFL do besides this merger to grow the game in terms of getting that younger generation in?
Well, for starters, and I know you guys have heard me probably say on Twitter, a video game would be nice.
We've said that. We've also
did you guys ever see the video game that was out on the PlayStation, Xbox?
The Doug Flutie one.
The Doug Flutie one?
Yeah. And unfortunately, the company went bankrupt. But I looked at that, I've downloaded the game. I have a couple of versions of it. And it's a great game for a PlayStation 2. But, kids are playing Madden now. Kids are playing MLB.
The graphics are...
Yeah, the graphics are... They're good for, again, like a PS2 or a PS1. Awesome, right. But not for a PS5. So I think that's what they need in terms of and that's a start. That's one of many things that they could do. Video game, better outreach. And, all of it. Just even to go online, where do I buy my CFL merchandise?
Yeah, Paul's had a bunch and I had to get mine from a third party. My Edmonton hat, because they didn't have the right sizes or whatever for hats either.
Right. And, here, again, I always hate to compare the CFL to the bigger league, but the bigger league, you know where to find stuff. It's a one, just type in 3 little letters into your browser and boom, you're there.
Something that really, it scares me. I was listening to, and we talked with Scott Stinson about it. I was listening to Farhan last night. They're talking about the sports betting and all that stuff, but they're talking about, he and Naylor did this big, the CFL is going to consolidate, right? We're cutting jobs. We're cutting all this stuff. We're hiring, potentially we could hire seasonal employees, right? And then maybe you could build out some stuff and you wouldn't, they could be 1099s and all that. And when we had Jason Greger on, I guess last or 2 weeks ago, we're trying to how do you grow the game all year, right? And right. When you're when you're cutting and cutting and cutting to save money and there's no more money coming in, right? Or they're eventually you can cut your way out of it, right? You can cut. And so, and I love Farhan, he's been on the show, but I'm like, dude, that is not consolidate, hiring seasonal employees to promote the CFL is that is not the way to do things, right? What are your thoughts on all that?
No, and I agree 100%. And what I see on Twitter, on social media, by just us fans, that's more than what the CFL is doing to promote their game. You look in the Twitter community, again, the Twitter is not the real world, but it's where the fans go. But the problem is it's a closed ecosystem it's an echo chamber with CFL fans. If the CFL wants to market itself, it's got to get beyond it's got to get out of the small town mentality. And I think they were off to a good start with the CFL 2.0, which is a great idea. But when you don't have any money if you're very small time and you don't have the money to even pay your employees, taking the game globally is never really going to happen.
Right. That's it's a fair question. Assuming a merger does happen, are there any rules you'd like to see come over from the CFL and be implemented into the XFL?
Yeah. 3 downs and the Rouge.
That's it?
That's it. It's got to be a compromise if you're combining 2 leagues. So you've got to start somewhere. And I think the field size is negotiable.
What about the movement before the snap?
I'm okay with or without it. It's not, we grew up here in the States with no movement. So seeing the movement in the backfield, though, it's still, when I watched every CFL game and I see that movement, I've never seen an offsides penalty for a guy going across that line a little bit before the snap. So it's an adjustment for any American who watches that going, well, what is that all about? But yeah, I'm fine without not having the movement, but the rouge to me is a big deal because that makes your punter that much more important.
As someone that, fan that watches both leagues, there's just been so much negativity, right? With changing the game and stuff. I mean, it's easy for three Americans to sit here and be like, oh, well, change whatever. But I mean, I do love the idea of whatever this being, not being the NFL light. We've talked about that before. Right. I mean, do you having those unique characteristics, right? I mean, obviously that's what you love about the CFL. Would you hope to, obviously incorporate that in?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to see it be an NFL or American football light. It's got to be its own sport. And I think that's how they should approach it is let's turn this into another sport. Yes, it is football, but it's a different brand of football. And NFL players, there's a lot of NFL players can't make it in the CFL and vice versa because of either speed or weight or, the CFL game, there's a quicker pace to it. And, the great thing about the CFL, it allows, smaller quarterbacks to play up there. Doug Flutie's a good case in point. Had Kyler Murray not made it with the Cardinals, he'd be perfect CFL.
Yeah, very true.
Which goes to show you that the NFL has become more like the CFL.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question for you today is, what are we looking at now? I mean, the news came out. We're maybe starting training camps, right? We're looking forward. What do you expect? What are you looking for in the next, week or two in terms of news?
Well, something more than we're talking and we're signing. We did sign a plan. Okay, training camps. And before I came on, I made sure just to check the news to see if there was anything that broke, because I kind of took a time out today on social media. And, give us a date, hard date that, and again, what is the plan to get all the American players over to their side of the border? And we don't see anything. The NHL had a plan, heck, we even had a plan. I always jokingly say, hey, when we were drunk last night, we had a plan to get back home.
Yeah. Good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a plan in place to get us all home safely.
One final just tidbit on that. I do see that with the plan, and then I get a lot of feedback of well, the NHL went in a week, or MLB went they didn't need. I'm yeah, but that's not the CFL. Because right. I think that they were able to. I don't follow all the other sports with COVID protocols and ramping up, but that's the feedback I get. I'm yeah, but that's not the CFL, and that's the NHL. Yeah, they can snap a finger and go. Yeah. So I don't yes.
But I think if you're a business, and we're talking about let's say 9 businesses. Each business has a plan, or at least should have a plan for success. And I don't see what the plan is at this point with, to get back on the field. And again, I'm not a businessman, so but I'm just taking that outside look like all fans are going, okay, well, if they can do it, or even, the minor leagues, use the minor leagues down here. The minor leagues have a plan to get back into play. You've got leagues up in Canada that are planning on playing again. So why not the CFL? And nobody has ever really explained to me why the CFL is so different in that regard. Yes, I know they have American players, but using last year, for example, they could have, and I made this suggestion on Twitter and somebody shouted me down, and I don't even think I brought it up again. But you've got a ton of Canadian college players up there who last year could have been their year to play pro ball. Everybody gets their shot instead of, and I don't think the CFL should rely so on American players as much as they do. I'd really like to see some Canadian talent, but
we'll see.
Yeah, we will. All
right. Greg James, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line on CFL America Radio. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Stay safe.
Welcome back. Our big XFL news now.
Well, first, thank you to Scott and Greg. We appreciate them.
Thanks.
I appreciate them taking the time. So,
Danny Garcia via Instagram. When you're working on innovation for the XFL, but the NDA is so deep, the only thing you can do is show the art in the women's bathroom, undisclosed location. What was that? What is that? I'm sure you're going to put it up on the screen when we talk about it.
Oh, yeah. So save the link. I'll do that. I'll forget that. So we won't delete that. Danny tweeted this. I'm sure this is going to be, I don't know if the link will lead to it or something. It might be something else. But Danny tweeted like it was art from a women's bathroom, but it was, boy, oh boy, that led to speculation. And I saw a lot of people. I go, guys, I had, Zach, love you, messaging me. Jake, love you, messaging me. I'm like, guys, there's no season next year. Right? Like, and people are like, is that official? Okay, like the XFL hasn't come out and said that it's like they're not playing next year. It's June. It's June. They're not playing next year. Sorry.
Not happening.
They're not going to hire anybody right now. They're not. I mean, they're working on stuff because they're like, people speculate like, oh, does that mean that they're going to like, guys?
We don't know yet.
But they're not going to hire.
This is all about. We don't know what this is all about. That's basically it's not leading us anywhere to think that they're going to fast track a 2022 season.
Yeah, it's not happening. They're not playing next year. I'm telling you, if you are listening to my voice right now, the XFL is not playing in 2022. Okay. I'm telling you right now, it's not happening. Anyway, but that was the big news. I'm sure that other podcasts will speculate about that for half an hour, but we're going to give you guys a lot of the other news going on. But anyway, that's XFL news. Danny put it on Instagram. So,
Bo Levi Mitchell is not the enemy. Glenn Suter is undisturbed by Bo's XFL comments and cautions players on merger drawbacks. I'm reading between the lines a little bit here, but he's looking at it as anytime there's a chance to improve the business model, it should be explored. And I feel the same way. That's why I've said many times, I'm keeping an open mind on all of this until we get the details. Good for you, Glenn.
Well, here's
open minds.
This is what's interesting about this. So Glenn has been like pretty anti-merger. So when this was sent to me by my spy, I'm like Littlefinger with not Varys. I'm Varys with my spiders. That Glenn has been very anti-XFL, and so the fact that he's like, "Hey, we should keep an open mind." Oh, also, Danny had on Instagram earlier the day put me in, coach. Oh wait, I am the coach, and it was like her looking in the mirror.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
And I tweeted, I'm like, breaking Danny to play in XFL. that was my takeaway from that. But guys, don't read too much into that. She's just like effing with you. But yeah, anyway, Glenn, there was what we talked all last week about Bo Levi Mitchell, and he's, he thinks it's going to be great. The fact that Glenn Suter is coming around. Anyway, so that is that takeaway.
Interesting. Single game sports betting bill C-218, sponsored by David Wells, or is it probably David Wells?
Yeah.
Just cleared another hurdle, has been referred to the Standing Senate Committee on Banking, Trade, and Commerce. It passed its second reading in the Senate. Again, a lot of people are thinking this is like a magic pill for the CFL. They're going to get all this revenue. Not necessarily the case, but we'll see. I mean, this will help, but I'm not sure it's end all be all.
Yeah, I really have thoughts on this. We talked a little bit about it with Scott. We talked a little bit about it with Greg. All of this, it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? Because we're talking about CFL loses 10 to 20 million on a good year. They're talking this is going to make potentially 20 million, 2 million per team. Hodge and Dunk talking, well, that means that we get rid of, we won't have any debt. We can, then wouldn't it be cool if we got Montreal back on board? And then wouldn't it be cool if we got all these hypotheticals? I'm like, so the teams that have suffered for the last decade, that nothing's been done to change that. We talked with Scott Ambrosi, focused on global growth and not local. Somehow now they're just going to come on board. Right. And and I love Farhan. But he was on Derek Taylor too. And because they're like, well, obviously, if you're betting on a Riders game, if someone bets $20, right, the CFL isn't going to do that. But Farhan, again, wouldn't it be cool? He's like, well, wouldn't it be cool if in the stadium there was a sponsored, booth or whatever, and people paid, whoever, DraftKings paid, and they're like, hey, we want to have the DraftKings betting area at the stadium. And I'm like, guys, that's like small-timey. That's like me putting a banner at a local fair for my wedding company or whatever. And I get, and I do think we lost some followers, listeners last week. We're talking about the CFL and the it's a little small timey sometimes like that. And that's a small timey idea. Like, well, we're going to have this sponsored area. Do you get what I'm saying?
It's all hopes. It's all hopes. It's nothing like that. You probably have not approached DraftKings or FanDuel or any of them with this idea, because you probably legally can't, since it's not even an avenue that they can even discuss, because you can't do these single game sports betting things right now in Canada. So why would DraftKings and FanDuel make that call or even pick up the phone and answer? I think you're putting a lot of hopes and dreams on the idea that DraftKings and FanDuel are going to think that this is something that they want to spend money on advertising and potentially make some money. There's a lot of hopes and dreams going on here.
It's just weird to me. And I have a thing, and this was a CFL News had sent their commentary to me, but then I listened to Hodge and Farhan and all that last night. So I kind of have my own, but I still, and again, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Wouldn't it be cool? And I get, and to me, my last thing on this is, if the XFL is like that shot in the arm, I feel like this is the same thing. Like, well, we're going to get that money. We got to get that money. Like, it feels to me just as short-sighted of like, well, we just got to get some cash revenue right now.
Wouldn't it be cool if I won an Emmy last year for my work? Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if I win an Emmy this year for my work? Wouldn't it be cool? A lot of things would be cool, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen.
I do not see this as the big silver bullet. I don't. And I don't think that merely by radically changing the gambling market of your entire country to allow single game betting, if all of that is going to do is erase the debt that your league loses every year, that is not a good thing.
No, you're breaking even.
Right.
The whole reason to have a business is to make money.
Right. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if like the NFL did something? They're like, well, we're just going to like, this is going to change the landscape of the world, and we're just going to not lose so much money anymore. Just a couple other CFL tidbits. This was a really cool thing. I found this. We talked the whole DK Metcalf. Remember, he was running the track and field, and that went crazy. The Seahawks guy. So this Jordan Moore, he is an Argonaut. He qualified. You know more about this kind of stuff? Do you want to talk about this?
He qualified for the 2021 Olympics, assuming there is a 2021 Olympics. His time in the 110 meter hurdles qualified him for a spot on the track team. That'll be that's what he's going to do next month. I guess that's interesting, is that he's not a wide receiver. He's not a running back. The kind of things you would think would be someone that's fast. Yeah. He's a linebacker.
Yeah.
So, and oh wow, and he's not even like, he's not even like a nickel back or a Sam that kind of spies. He plays the middle and the weak side. So this guy's just crazy athletic and crazy fast and crazy flexible for a very strong linebacker. Think of like, let's see, who are those kinds of linebackers, like Junior Seau being able to qualify for the Olympic team, or Ray Lewis or someone like that. You're like, wow, that would be impressive. This is kind of same level.
I just thought that was cool.
He's a legit beast at linebacker, and now he's going to be, running track.
Yeah, the last thing, this went everywhere today, and congratulations, Catherine Rake, former assistant, Raish, former assistant GM of the Alouettes and the Argos. She is becoming the highest ranking female personnel in the NFL. This went everywhere this morning. I just want to make sure we didn't, we're not going to do a whole segment on, but announced today she was promoted to vice president of football operations for the Eagles. You are going to have a terrible team this year. I'm kidding, but you're going to have a wonderful professional in the VP.
And watch, she'll turn it around. She'll make it happen in Philly. She will.
I'm very thrilled for the Carson Wentz in Indianapolis experiment that we have. I am thrilled for that first game with the Seahawks. I'm very excited for that game. Anyway, but congratulations for her, and that's great. It shouldn't be the exception. It should be the rule. Like I talked earlier with the NFL, with the whole COVID thing, was handled by these wonderful women that like it doesn't matter anymore, or it shouldn't matter anymore. But congratulations to her.
Some signings. The Cleveland Browns have signed St. Louis BattleHawks tight end Connor Davis. The DC Defenders, former safety Shamarko Thomas, signed with the Ottawa REDBLACKS in the CFL. And Alabama receiver John Mechie III wins the John Cornish Trophy as the top Canadian football player in NCAA football.
I just felt like I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. I was like, I didn't want to get yelled at. Like, how didn't you talk about the Cornish? Like, I didn't want Jim Mullen being like, you didn't talk about the Cornish Trophy in the podcast. Well, I got my hat on, Jim.
I know.
I know.
I don't want to. I'm kind of having some PTSD issues about that.
Yeah,
that we'll talk off the podcast about. So
anyway, but yeah, so that's all the stuff. Spring League stuff coming up. But yeah, we'll go to break.
And we also got Cole Boozer. Reid had to interview him solo because I was at work. I was on the job site. So Reid grabbed an interview with Cole Boozer real quick. We'll have that after the break.
Well, Cole Boozer, I'm so excited. Friend of the show, longtime friend of the show. I think all the way back to like episode 7 of the show. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to be back on the podcast. The Markcast, not the Markcast.
Longtime listeners will know we did a funny prank and we had Cole wish Paul well wishes and he called it the Markcast and not the Markcast. And so we've got that. Dorothy, my wife, and I think a lot of our listeners will want to know first and foremost, how is your dog doing?
Oh, he's awesome. He's about 10, almost 11 months old. He is almost 60 pounds now. He's a monster. Right now, my mom's watching him while I'm here, but my mom sends me pictures every day. So she says like having a great time throwing the ball around and, learning slowly. Well, I have to go back. I went back home last weekend, just check in, say hello to everybody. And, they've been getting on his tricks. So that's good to go. So happy about that.
That's good. Well, so last we spoke, you were training. I think you were doing some coaching. We were trying to figure out next steps. How did you wind up here in the Spring League? Very excited when you were announced and among other players that we know. So how did that all wind up coming about?
So when my agent and I were talking, and at first we had a couple candidate teams call, and we were just they were waiting to see for opportunities. We were just waiting. And then he's like, well, listen, the Spring League came up. Like, if you think it's a good idea, like we could try it out. And so I did more information research and stuff like that. And, I think it's a good, like, especially because it's on Fox and all that. I think it's a great opportunity for some players to get looked at like myself who kind of need to improve and get more film out there. And I think this would be perfect for me. Going forward.
Yeah, it's exciting. And what I was so excited about was, the players and then obviously the coaches and everything. Here you are on the lineman with Halmummy. Obviously, he was, you guys were separate in the original XFL, but how has that been kind of working under him and the rest of the coaching staff that you've had there?
That's awesome. Coach Halmummy is an awesome coach. I mean, very player coach type of guy, like tries to rest us, but also like knows like when we have to go. System's great. Love it. We got a great team, great quarterback, great defense, great offense. Like, I think that him drafting the team we did and whatever like that, we've had great success so far and hopefully more in the future.
It's been so exciting for me, and I know our listeners, to watch these games. Here are players that we've tracked through a variety of different, outlets. To see them, I was watching the game Thursday night and Dorothy comes down and, what's going on? I said, like, well, there's Cole, like he's playing, or there's like, I'm serious, right? And she's like, oh, wow, like that's awesome. And these players that we've tracked now, getting to see them, on Fox in prime time, in good slots. What has that been like and to have that elevated exposure?
I think it's awesome. Being on Fox is just a big network, and also the fact is we're playing in the Indianapolis Colts Stadium, which is another cool little aspect of it. Just playing in another professional stadium, great facility, and I think that definitely this league can slowly like is making a reputation for grabbing players to the NFL. So I think it's great.
So we had Stan on, one of your quarterbacks, kind of pseudo coach last week. And, we were talking about, with the Spring League and a lot of the guys maybe that would be practicing running reps and stuff, otherwise, being on TV, being elevated, having this opportunity to get the spotlight, is more beneficial, right? To getting, looks and tape. Do you feel like there's added pressure, like excitement, good nervous energy from your teammates and you when you guys are taking the field, like on Thursday we watched?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I still obviously get that nervous feeling in my stomach, which is obviously means I still love the game. I mean, I think you could see too on last Thursday when we played the Alphas, we just brought a ton of energy, right? And I think that if we continue to bring that energy week in and week out, we can win the North, which would be awesome to get in that championship and really get more exposure for me and other players who haven't gotten a shot or who need another shot again to show everyone in the NFL that we need to be back up there.
Yeah, what happened in that game? Because you guys came to play. Even the announcers said they're like, man, the linemen came ready to go. And, here the Alphas had won 2 games, hadn't lost yet. But I mean, even when the commentary is talking about how much like fire you guys brought, I mean, what happened behind that?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, we just came out. Well, we knew like right off the rip they were the big dogs. But yeah, we just like came out with so much energy. They look very tired. Very like I think it was the 10 o'clock game. They haven't done it yet. I think they're doing it this week too. So I think they'll be more prepared this week for sure.
Is that tougher with that later time slot?
Yes, because it throws off a lot of your timing. So for us, like Coach Mummy had us do a midnight walkthrough. So we would stay up so we can still sleep in a little bit more the next day, ready to go. So the first time we did it, we played the Conquerors. And to be honest, I was struggling a little bit. I was a little tired. I've never done a 10 o'clock slot. I think the only time I've ever done it was in college when we played Vanderbilt, when I was at Temple and we played Vanderbilt. And the game got pushed back so far because of rain delays. And we came out and won, but like we got home at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Like it was insane. But yeah, like it was very, very tough. I think this time we were more prepared for it, ready to go. Everybody kind of got like a little sequence ready for it and more prepared this time.
What has it been like with with the 2 different hubs, right? You got the 4 teams, you're kind of doing your intermix there. What is that like as a player? Cause I think there's like, not kind of recycled, repeated games, but where you're playing the same competition, maybe, in a couple weeks, like how does that work? Just mentally kind of preparing for the games and going through all that?
Well, it's nice is that you kind of, so like for us as the offensive linemen, we have personnel meetings on every team. Obviously the first game we couldn't do that. Just having essentially just long story short, just having personnel meetings throughout the week and scouting people and everyone having their share of the room, like, and having like, we have the running backs and the linemen in our room, like scouting for all of us is a big deal, especially when we want to run the ball. And I think last game, once we went up, I think showing we could really, our offensive line can push people, run the ball, makes us really dynamic. But yeah, having those personnel meetings for us when we get it going is awesome.
What's been interesting to me in seeing this league now, and it seems like they're getting a little bit more. We're acknowledging XFL Pass, we're acknowledging these other things, but for fans of the sport, we see fan control guys, we see CFL guys, we see former spring league, like Kevin Anderson's back or whatever. We see XFL guys, we see all this great talent. Is it weird for you coming in, maybe having seen some of these players other places or heard about them? And it seems like it's almost like an all-star kind of, we're like celebrity Big Brother. We're calling in everybody. Does it feel that way?
Kind of. It's kind of cool that I do know a lot of different people in this league. Like I know Kalani plays defensive tackle for the Aviators, so I said what's up to him, and I got to play against him not this game, the game before for the Aviators. And I know other people in the league, but more down south. So I had like 2 of my also Garrett Cole was on our team. He was a corner for us for the Defenders, and then which is kind of awesome to see him again. But also just having teammates down in the South too, which hopefully they're on the Jousters. So hopefully we can meet them in the finals. It'd be kind of cool to meet up with them and see how this whole thing goes.
When you saw, and I don't know how well you knew of the coaches and everything were announced before you came in, but when you saw all this, knowledge and the staff and everybody helping you guys out, what was your reactions to seeing that?
Just speaking personally, like I know that a lot of these coaches, like, Coach Glansville, in the North Division, like is a well-known coach, NFL, the badass of the old NFL, which is kind of cool to play against him. But having Coach Mummy, like the founder essentially of like the air raid offense, is like really cool to learn from him every day and kind of see like his perspective on a lot of things, which is really cool.
How do you think that you've been doing so far? I mean, from the untrained eye, I'm watching the games. Like, oh, it seems like Cole's, seems good. How have you felt about your experiences so far?
So I think that the first game was really just, for me, is breaking off a rust, which kind of sucked. Is that I don't think I played as well as I could have. The Aviators, I got better, and I think the Alphas, I played pretty well for the most part, especially because I didn't really give up anything other than like one or two batted balls, and that's like kind of something I just worked on towards middle and towards the game. But they didn't really get close to Ryan, which is good. And I think if I continue on this, I think I can be to show the NFL what I really am as a good offensive tackle that really can compete in the NFL.
How do you, and I think we talked about this, last time we were on, I mean, and we've had other players come on from the spring league and everything else, this constant having to be at this peak physical condition, ready to go, right? Trying to get looks, trying to get tape. Mentally, how do you grapple with that and keep, motivated?
It is tough. There are good days and bad days, but as my agent says, we have to stay at a constant. Right. There's no highs too high, no lows too low. Like we have to just stay at like a whatever. And sometimes it is something like a distraction, right? Finding something to do. So like an example would be my dog, right? Like he is a distraction every day. Like something like I love him. Like he's my thing. He's like something that I'm playing for, but also like, again, like I'm thinking of him like all the time. It's something just to throw my mind away. If I get too like before this, like waiting for an opportunity is frustration. Like, oh, why I haven't picked up yet? Like, da-da-da. I'm like, listen, like, it's okay, Cole. Like, you got to just keep constant, right? Like that, like working, like coaching, like something like that, staying in the game, keeping your mind sharp, working out a couple days a week, like just making sure you're good to go.
In terms of you next, does this later slot in May, does that work out well for getting out of this and hopefully getting picked up later this summer? Is that kind of the mindset behind that? And how do you feel, obviously moving in next steps in that way?
So the goal, yes, would be like to get picked up after this and maybe like get into an OTA or something like that and like give a tryout or something, like give my shot coming up. Or like if, depending on how much they can bring into camp, to maybe get into a camp and get like that August or that July, August type slot and like get in there and see him work and see if I can get into an opportunity, whether it may be. I know Canada might be, I heard they're starting later this year. So maybe either Canada or the NFL, whatever happens. But when I go home, I'm planning on after the season, healing up, training, getting ready to go, keeping my body in shape. The nice part about this league is that I will be in football shape. I'll be ready to go, which is a very big plus about this league. To get ready for the conditioning that you're getting at home, but you're not getting like live reps. Like in your head, like I'm seeing stuff now that I haven't seen since the XFL, like live reps. So it's big time.
Yeah, that's something that we, Paul and I watch a lot of wrestling, and that's the same thing, right? You can work out in the gym, but until you're in the ring doing it, and until you're on the field with the snaps and all that. What was that first week tough for a lot of players to get worked up to that?
I think some players, like me, it's just banging rust off. It's like, like you had live bullets are coming, like, we'll see what happens. Like, I'm going to do my technique and hopefully that works. And sometimes it doesn't. And there's something you can always fix. You go to the film room, you fix it the next week going forward. And just something I always like think about when I go to practice or like when I'm going to my next game, I'm working on this one thing. I can't work on 5 things at once. I can only work on one thing. My coach is like, my old offensive line coach, who's now the Georgia Tech tight ends coach, Chris Wiesahan. He's just like, listen, you got to work this. 1 day a week, work this, right? Once you get that done, then you can move on to the next thing. You can't work 5 things or just you become average at doing that. and it's just not right. You want to be elite.
So now, you've been gracious with your time hopping on. You've got meetings tonight, right? We're preparing for the game tomorrow. I mean, this episode, will air after the games this week, but obviously there'll be more weeks. Just, busy time, right? I mean, but overall fun. Any other big takeaways or thoughts before we let you go?
No, I mean, again, thank you for having me on the pod. I appreciate it. I always have a great time here. 7:00 tomorrow, we play the Conquerors, so we get our chance to get back and really take this division. So can't wait for that tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, I was famously a Jousters guy last season. They never made it on TV. I've been a Jousters fan this season, and I've yet, with my work schedule, to watch any of those games. Having Stan on and having you on now, not intentionally having two linemen, but I do think, and with the dominating performance you guys had last week, I feel very strong with that, especially with Coach Mummy. Do you think I'm making the right call with that?
I would just say we're a great team, great guys. We work hard. We're hardworking guys, blue collar working guys, work like the linemen here, like in Indianapolis.
And it does seem with the turnover bell, I got the hat. We saw you. I forgot to bring that up. We saw you with the hat. I saw you on TV. It does seem like a really fun group of people. Would you agree with that?
Fun group of people working hard. Like I said, blue collar guys. We're working hard, like the linemen in Indianapolis. The turnover belt, you could see that or like that, but Coach Mummy wanted to obviously reach out to the Indianapolis linemen, like the actual linemen, because no one knows. Every time I said, "What team am I on?" I'm on the lineman. He's like, "Yeah, but what team are you on? I know you're a lineman." I was like, "No, the lineman." So we got the cool turnover belt, and then he said, because the offensive linemen never get to do anything, we never get some cool, we scored a touchdown, because you always do that. Right, you got the chain or something like that, like Miami or like that. For us, he gets us the hard hat. So it's the best block of the drive, or the way we scored. Whenever we score a touchdown, we get to wear the hard hat. And for us, we just we're really our offensive line is very unselfish. So we're all right, everybody had a good job. We all contributed. Everybody just passed the hat down, everybody wearing the stuff. So.
I love it. Yeah,
awesome.
I saw that. I thought, Cole looks so handsome there with his hard hat. I like that. And then last question, we'll let you go. Internet's breaking up. What is with Coach Mummy and the towel?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you. It's just his thing. It's just part of his swag. I appreciate it. I told him today we were doing the walkthrough. It's a little hot in here. He said, "You're lucky you got that towel right there. You can kind of brush everything off." I'm dripping in sweat. So, "Oh yeah, I got the towel. It's all good." He's dabbing his head, making sure he's ready to go. I got to ask him though, for sure. I'll get back to you on that. What the deal is with the swag of his towel.
Yeah, because sometimes it's around the neck, sometimes it's around the waist, sometimes it's it's interesting. I don't know what quite the story is with that.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know about that. That's a very good question.
Well, Cole, thank you for setting this up, Spring League again, for making this work. We appreciate you coming on and sharing the good word, and we'll be cheering for you. I think we're officially men now on the podcast, Paul and I. So
perfect, awesome. Thank you again. I appreciate being on the pod. Always have a great time.
Awesome.
Welcome back. Want to thank Cole Boozer for his time. Thanks to Spring League for getting us someone to talk to. It's been, we've gone back and forth, and they haven't been as open to having us talk to their people, but we're glad we finally got them.
We really appreciate it.
Up, so
also,
really appreciate it.
Cole told me, I'm not going to break kayfabe, but Cole told me offline. He goes, other podcasts have reached out to me. They wanted me to come on. He goes, I just wanted to do you guys.
I appreciate that.
Cole, God bless you.
Yep. I appreciate loyalty. So you watched some TSL?
Yeah, I watched just a couple. And then I want to get to ratings, but it was so cool. I watched the Thursday games, the Saturday games. I've had weddings every weekend, so I haven't been able to watch. But the Thursday games were great. Conquerors won over the Aviators. They looked good. Brandon Silvers played again. This is like the prince that was promised in the XFL. Where has Brandon Silvers been my whole life? But the linemen, and I talked about this with Cole. absolutely killed the Alphas. It was like 47-7. But what was so cool about it was they were up by so much that, remember, Stan Bedwell, I interviewed him last week. Stan's the backup quarterback that is never supposed to play. Like, he's basically just a player coach. They were up by so much that they brought Stan in, and Stan got to throw a touchdown, got interviewed on the Fox broadcast. And I'm like, I'm so glad that we interviewed this wonderful man, Stan Bedwell, that was on. But it was great. Like, he was a little rusty, right? He wasn't really planning to play. He was definitely more of a coach, but he got to play, got to have a TD in the game, and it was great. A couple other things. Kevin Gilbride was rocking his New York Guardians jacket during the Jazzers game.
Interesting.
That was cool. I thought that was neat. I mean, it was I guess that I missed the game, but I guess it was just a slog. It was totally rainy there in Houston. A couple of things. The Saturday game averaged 408,000 viewers.
That's good.
Previously, it was 415. There's the Showbuzz daily site. I guess like they're going out of business or something. That's been provided a lot of the ratings for the Spring League stuff.
They had an office in Hollywood and it's closed.
Yeah, so something's going on with that. But Seth, friend of the show, 2G Master on Twitter, he tweeted, the Spring League is winning in ways I can't even explain. The NHL on NBC averages just under 400,000. Meanwhile, a league with a marketing budget of a large Coke is beating it with the 408. So I thought that was cool.
It is. Alpha's offensive lineman Christian Delorio signed with the Titans. Congrats to him.
Like seeing Spring League guys get signed.
Yep, that's good.
And then I wish I could go to this game. I have an event that was I booked the dancer saddle for last year. We all know what happened last year. It was rescheduled for the fall. We all know what was going on in the fall. It is that day. I would be in Houston. I cannot get out of this dancer saddle. But they announced that the tickets for Rice Stadium, they're going to host the championship game. It's $30 for GA or $250 for a VIP sideline pass. And I would be popping on that.
That sideline pass. You totally did sideline pass.
Front row, or we don't go. Anyway, are you sad that we can't go to the Spring League game?
I mean, given all the rain that's happening right now, I mean, my sister just texted me like during the middle of the show and she sent me a screenshot of the weather. I don't know if I'd want to go anywhere near Houston right now at all with all the rain that's going on. She lives close to Houston and she's just like, oh, make it stop. Make all the rain stop. So
anyway, but that Spring League stuff was good. I got my net out for a big fish interview next week. Final fan controlled thoughts today. We do have a little bit of news. First off, I'll leave the thing that's going to strike you till the end, Paul, because you're going to get angry. But before that, when Aaron Rodgers was on Kenny Mayne's interview this week, right? Kenny Mayne, ESPN, he had his final show. He had talked to Aaron Rodgers. We all know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. He joked and he goes like, well, Aaron, are you headed to fan controlled football? And boy, everyone fan controlled. I go, this is like, it's a joke. Like it's a joke. Like the fact that I get that it's cool to be mentioned, whatever, but the fact that you're like, that's like when the XFL is like, well, the Jaguars suck so bad, they should go play in the XFL. The XFL is not like, yeah, because it's like they're making fun of you. Any thoughts about fan controlled football being mentioned by Kenny Mayne?
Yeah, it's like what you said. They're mocking you. It's not like a legitimate thing. No,
it's not. But they were like, oh, like ears to the ground. I'm like, no, guys, this is a joke. Last thing today, and this will take us home. Patrick Dees, they did their show this week, and Patrick Dees, they're teasing fan controlled sports, and the first thing that was brought up was to expand the leagues, and they were talking about fan controlled baseball.
No. Hell no. Hell effing no. It's bad enough that you have fan-controlled football that's not really football. I can't imagine the kind of crap you would do to a game that I spent growing up playing for, 15 years. T-ball, American Legion ball, Little League, high school, college. No.
What do you vote on? Like the pitches? Are you going to swing at this bat? Like, what do you vote on?
Do you vote on who's playing what position?
Like, I mean, I'm serious. Like, what do you actually like? Football makes sense. Like, we're voting on the plays. Like, what do you vote on? I mean, I get you draft the play. I get that you can like draft the players and pick the positions and all that. But what do you like? Game day, throw a fastball.
Baseball already has a timing problem in itself. It already has an issue where they want the games to go faster. This would extend the games probably like twice as long because you have to pick the pitch and then wait for the results to come in. And then who's to say that the pitcher that's out there can throw the kind of pitch you want to throw? Like, you're very limited in terms of like, there's some pitchers that can throw a curve and a heater, and that's it. There are some pitchers that can, there's different types of 4-seam, 2-seam fastballs. These kinds of things all need to be factored in. It's like, there's too many variables in this, and that's a dumb idea. I'm sorry, but it is a flat out stupid idea. I'm almost really mad at you for bringing this onto the podcast. I really am.
I'm gonna tell you this, and I don't want to trigger you too bad. I might have purchased the domain fancontrolpodcast.com. If this merger thing doesn't work out the way that we want it to, we might start a fan control podcast covering the fan control baseball. I'm dying. I knew this would be so funny today when I saw that. I found it on the sheet. I'm just joking, but I do own fancontrolpodcast.com. So if anyone wants to buy that.
The fact that I'm talking really low and calm about this is not indicative of how angry I am about this news. This is not funny to me.
Yeah, anyway.
This is blasphemous.
Yeah, it's really bad. Anyway, there you go. We're in and out. We got the guest. We're in and out hour here. Good show. Thank you, Paul. But it was a good show. I thought we did good.
Yeah, definitely that. Again, want to tease this. You heard from us earlier. Want to say it again. Hop on to manscaped.com. Plug in the code Markcast. 20% off free shipping on a Manscaped razor. So do that. Help support the show. We appreciate all your support. We appreciate your listenership. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Give us a review on your audio podcast player. Whatever it takes, bump us up. We help it. We appreciate it. We love all of our listeners. And thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
All right. Later.